Hey y'all. I got it. So we are back for another segment of In the News, and today we are talking about the Migos suing their attorney and how juicy it is. Y'all ready to talk about it? Let's go. So what has happened basically is the Migos have sued their previous counsel for basically malpractice and gross negligence and taking all this money that they believe that the attorney was not entitled to. Okay, so like always, I like to use these as learning pivot moments for us to understand and better get, how did we get in this position and how to make sure y'all don't get in this said position. Okay, first of all, based on the complaint, there seems to be a conflict because the same attorney was representing the Migos that have also represented their label, which is Quality Control Music. Okay, so y'all get your own attorney. I have said this to y'all. Attorneys before me have said this. Attorneys after me, I'm sure, will say this. You need your own counsel. Based on the complaint, they're basically saying like, okay, they were young at the time. They, I would infer not having a whole lot of money, so not being able to hire anybody and really just trusting that this attorney was going to make sure everything was in their best interest. I get it. I totally get it. Money is tight. It's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to trust this, sign it, and we'll figure it out. Well, this oftentimes is what happens when you figure it out and you don't go back to check stuff once you do get the bag. Okay, so essentially they use the same guy that basically I'm sure was recommended for them to look over the agreement. So they signed the original contract with Quality with their label, and once they signed their original contract, they never really went back and said, okay, wait, this could potentially be a conflict, because as attorneys, I cannot represent both people on both sides of the deal. Either I'm going to represent the label, or I'm going to represent the artist. If essentially both parties say, well, no, hey, we're not going to get an independent attorney, I have to disclose and say, okay, well, look, then you all come to some type of terms, whatever those terms may be, and then I will just draft the agreement based on what you all have said, and making sure that they understand that it is a conflict for me to represent both parties on both sides of the table. One attorney should not be representing both parties, because then the conflict comes in, as I'm sure you all have now inferred, because you don't know, is the attorney looking out for whose interest is the attorney looking out for? Is it the label, or is it you as the artist? So you want to make sure you have your own attorney. You need to have your own attorney. If you're in a group like the Migos, then the Migos would have an attorney that speaks for the entire group. But then each individual member of the group would then have their own attorney as well. Because once again, you want to make sure that there is never a conflict, and you are always secure that there is somebody always that you have personally hired taking care and looking out for your best interest. And many of the situations explained in the lawsuit, there became an issue because the attorney was representing not only the label but also representing the artist, and it became very unclear whose interest he was protecting. Was he protecting the Migos, or was he really protecting the label? Yes, once again, in here it infers like, everybody is family. I mean, y'all, everybody family till it comes to money. Some of y'all blood relatives, y'all have gotten into pure fights over money, right? So you can't use that as a default. Everybody still needs to make sure that they have a representative, because then it keeps it clean and everybody's on the up and up, right? So, second thing, just like I preach about having a contract and signing a contract, if you contact me, you work with me, you will always know I send out an attorney-client agreement. You have to have a contract with these attorneys. It's important, because then we are clear on what monies you are paying me, whether it's a contingency fee. In here, a part of the problem is that the attorney is getting paid a 5% contingency fee for the work that they are doing on behalf of the Migos group. Now, that 5% is a standard 5%, but where is that money coming from? Why are we not clear? And if you are doing a contingency, you have to have an agreement. Sign agreements with your attorneys just like you sign agreements with everybody else. There are instances when you're doing things like flat fees. So let's say, for instance, you've just paid an attorney for just a single flat fee. Even then, you need a contract, but depending on where you're working in, the clauses of that, or the contracts and the rules of that particular state as it relates to working with attorneys, it may be a little bit lax. But just in general, y'all, the safest bet in any situation is to make sure you have an agreement so everybody is clear on what services they're going to provide, how much it's going to cost, if it's contingency, what's the percentage of that contingency, and where the money can and cannot be pulled from when you start making money. So they needed a contract, and in this particular situation there was not a contract, which really does not benefit the attorney in this particular matter. The third thing I want to stress to y'all is understanding the flow of business. You have to understand the flow of business and how one party versus the other party gets paid. When you're assigned with an independent label who may not have distribution and may get distribution later, oftentimes they go and they contract with a Capitol Records or a Universal to then say, okay, hey, I want to contract with you all so you all can put out the albums of the artists that I have signed to my label. You want to understand that, because when they do that, you want to know, does that deal benefit you as the artist? Are you entitled to understand what the terms are? A lot of times those deals may not benefit you as the artist if you are signed to that independent label, but you have to understand that so that you know, okay, this is the moment that we need to go in and renegotiate, or just have clarity, or your contract initially needs to say, hey, if you get a distribution deal, then it opens the doors for us to be able to renegotiate or understand what the terms are, so that in the long run you don't get screwed when it comes to the royalties, when it comes to advances and things like that, because the first party to get paid is going to be that independent label, because they are the ones that have the direct deal with that distribution / major record company. Okay, so first thing I want to stress, get your own attorney. Always have your own attorney. Okay, making sure that if you don't have one in the beginning, when you do get your first bag, you immediately go get one and take that contract and say, hey, this is the contract I signed. I don't know, it may be good, it may be bad, but let's just talk about it so I understand where I sit at, and at a moment where it's best for me to renegotiate when I have the opportunity, then let's do that now that I have the money to acquire an attorney. Just don't be going out here and just keep it moving, because when you keep it moving, all of a sudden stuff starts moving so quickly and you end up turning around and being like, well, wait, something's not right here. And we are back at the root of the problem, which was in the beginning when we initially signed this agreement years ago. Okay, second thing, sign the contract with your attorney so you're clear on what fees they're taking and how the money is going to be collected. And the third thing is really invest in understanding the business, because if you're signing to an independent record label, they're going to get distribution probably from a major, and you want to understand, or at least be privy to the terms and understand how the money flows, because it's going to go from the distributor to the record label, then to you. You are the last person to get paid. And how does that look? Is that in your best interest as the artist? Okay, so that is our end of news segment for this week. Y'all have a great week. Bye, y'all.